Welcome back to Scouching's 2025 NHL Draft Recap Series, and today we're looking at the New York Rangers. And the Rangers are an NHL team in a bit of a tough spot. They are a playoff bubble team, coming off what I can't imagine wasn't a disappointing season, and they gave up their first round pick in this year's draft class, so they didn't have a pick until the 43rd overall pick, but all things considered, I think they did pretty well this season in the draft. Starting things off, they drafted Malcolm Spence, and Spence was the last name in my first round this year, so getting him in the middle of the second round makes sense to me. Malcolm Spence is just a really straightforward hockey player. He's really kind of built in a similar mold to me as an Anton Frondell, but with a little bit more of a possession instinct in the offensive zone especially, but not necessarily the same intensity level, physicality. Nothing is really a weak point in Spence's game, but there isn't a whole lot that I can really point to go, this is what he's going to excel at in the NHL. But he's always struck me as a player who is competitive enough, physical enough, skilled enough of a finisher. Lots of things check enough of a box that I could see some kind of an NHL player here someday. He seems like the player who will just work his way into a job on the ice and off it, and coaches will reward it. At 70th overall, they drafted Shawn Barnhill. I saw a big, lanky defenseman who really skated very, very well for his size. Barnhill is a fascinatingly raw player. There aren't a tremendous amount of really high value defense first defensemen available in this year's draft class, at least as they are in 2025, but Barnhill is very close to that, and I think that's valuable. Really mobile, really good stick checker as well, blocks a heck of a lot of entries based on his footwork and his ability to cover the ice and his reach. Some of the bigger hits I've seen from defensemen this year came from Shawn Barnhill. I would love to see that explored more personally, but the other thing too is I saw Shawn Barnhill wheel up from below the goal line and slice and dice through the entire team and attack the middle of the ice in the offensive zone, which not a whole lot of defensemen did as well as he did when he chose to do it. I think this is a player that really has a really good pathway ahead of him. I could very easily see Barnhill becoming one of the more undervalued defensemen coming out of this draft class. I had him at 53, which was higher than most people. I really like Shawn Barnhill, and I think that he's a player that you've got to give time, you have to give proper development to, because he's gonna probably need some guidance to really hone in on his style of play, but there's something here with Barnhill, and I've really liked every single time that I've seen him. There are some rough patches for sure, but you can see the potential in his game, and I respect that a lot. At 89th, they took Archam Gonchar, and he's another one of these defensemen who really want to play that Roman Josi, Dougie Hamilton style, pinch up from the offensive blue line, challenge defensemen one-on-one, attack the middle of the ice type defensemen, who I would say hit or miss, but when they hit, they're really exciting. A top 100 pick, I can understand if you believe in the upside. He's a kind of defenseman there isn't a whole lot of in the NHL, but not sure the fundamentals are there in Gonchar's game to get there at the NHL level, but he's wired a certain way that I always enjoyed watching this year, so if the rest of the picture can sort of boost that natural style of play, then I think we're dealing with an interesting player here. At 111th overall, the New York Rangers selected Niklas Erikson. Now, Erikson is a player who had a lot of fanfare coming into the season, and there were people saying that he might be the best 17-year-old Norwegian that they have ever produced. He is very young for this year's draft class, which is always an asset in my opinion, but for me, Erikson is just one of these players who is very smart. There's a lot that I like about his game in terms of his off-puck reads, his positioning and everything, but he does seem to be a player who's a little bit on the smaller side that I personally think has a hard time cracking the NHL. I think his decisions happened a little too slowly, his skating isn't necessarily high-end enough, his skill level, while good, is not good enough for me to really give him a pass as an NHL prospect, but there's a lot here that I think really helps him out. There's a confidence in his game, there's a responsibility, he plays like he really knows what he's doing out there, which I like to see. He's a fun player to watch, there's a lot to like about him, and you've got the advantage of youth, so give him a few years and maybe he turns into something that he could be. At 139th, they drafted a personal favorite of mine in Zeb Lindren, but Lindgren for me did not really change all that much over the course of this season. At the beginning of the year when I watched him with his pro team playing Champions League hockey, I saw a pretty pretty mobile, safe, simple defenseman. But then seeing him back with the junior team, there was just something weird going on with his game. The skill level just wasn't really dynamic enough. The skating ability, while good, there wasn't a whole lot of real serious energy to it or pace pushing or anything like that. The offensive threat just wasn't really developing the way I thought it would. I think there's upside here, and this is about the range I would think about taking him. I really liked him at the beginning of the year, but the more I watched him, the more I soured on him a little. But hey, there's a nice baseline here with him, and you give him some time, and you never know what development can do. At 166th, the New York Rangers dipped their toe into the re-entry pool and took Samuel Young. Young is a player who I have never seen before, never heard his name before, and when I went and watched him after the draft, I was really pleasantly surprised with what I saw out of him. I know you can look at his elite prospects page and see that he was playing Finnish junior hockey this year and wasn't necessarily shooting the lights out, but that doesn't mean he can't shoot. This is a big, quick skater who really can get the puck around guys, get shots off quickly, and this is a guy who, as an individually talented player, I think brings a lot to the table with regards to size, energy, shooting ability, skill level, and just the pace that he plays the game at, I really enjoyed. I'm not sure that from what I saw, the thinking ability on the fly, the passing ability, the playmaking vision, it wasn't necessarily there to become a real dual threat player outside of individually generating offense for himself. But there's a lot of talent here with Sam Young, I think. So I'll be curious to track him over the next little while because there's a decent chance that he could surprise people considering where he was drafted. At 171st, they drafted Evan Passmore, who was another big defenseman coming out of the CHL. Of all of the big ones, I think Passmore was one of the more intriguing, some decent physical tools. Defensively, he gets around the ice okay. There's a bit of skill that he combines with a bit of deception to sort of move around passing lanes and look off options and juggle multiple vision options for him on the breakouts. Just not a guy who really moved the needle for me a whole lot whenever I did see him this year, but you know what? It's 171st overall. If a big, decent skating defenseman that can just make that first pass is what you're looking for as a potential 7th, 6th round nice pickup, Passmore's an alright option because there is something to his game that might get him there. It's just not my type of player to swing on. And at 203rd overall, they drafted Felix Farhar. He played a decent stretch in the SHL this season, but I didn't think he really looked that comfortable at that level. Looking at all of the other defensemen that were drafted ahead of him, the bigger ones, the heavier ones, the more physical ones, I still saw more interesting, dynamic, and skilled abilities out of Felix Farhar than I did out of all of those other ones. He's got some interesting tools in his toolkit that, again, I think similar to a Niklas Erikson or a Zeb Lindren, just need to be explored a little more and developed a little more. That might be the trend here for New York, is drafting guys who there's like a glimmer of something there, a certain type of identity that they were interested in, and they just want to develop that and see how far they can take it, which I can understand. Considering they had no picks in the top 40, did really well, so they're getting a 1D. Malcolm Spence, I see the likelihood of what he's going to be in the NHL, and I'm not sure he's super high in your lineup, but at 43rd overall, if you get an everyday player who is a decent third line checking forward with some decent possession ability, you've done well. And I think Malcolm Spence could be that. Shawn Barnhill is a fascinating project to bet on that I would absolutely be okay with. Maybe not second guy I pick level, but definitely not that much further back than that. Archam Gonchar is an interesting bet. Niklas Erikson is a very young, energetic bet. Samuel Young is a curious one. Zeb Lindren is a curious one. Evan Passmore has the tools NHL teams are looking for. And Felix Farhar, there's some interesting dynamic skill there and a little bit of physical energy that I think could be worked on. Are they going to end up with a whole bunch of great players? I'm not sure, but I think that they ran the gamut of some interesting risks and some interesting development projects to bet on, with Malcolm Spence leading the way as a really solid pickup in the middle of the second round. And with that, we're going to call it. If you liked the video, definitely like and subscribe. If you really liked it, definitely consider a subscription over at Scouching.ca, where you can get access to all kinds of fun data tools on our Discord server and plenty of other fun stuff that you're just not going to find anywhere else on the internet. So check that out at Scouching.ca. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.